Hello mermaids and barnacle boys, my name is SpongeDrew and welcome back to another video. I know I've been gone for probably a little bit, but I am back once more to deliver another video for you guys. Today we are doing once again another SpongeBob book, kind of like reading review, and this one is New Student StarFish. Now before I get started, I do apologize that I really haven't been active as much. It's been a little bit busy for me for this past month, because I know most certainly everyone is doing their finals or just got done with their finals and whatnot. And I know I said in a video in the past that I will be trying to get like OBS, get like a better recording setup and everything. I promise you it will happen. It's just gonna take me some time, some money to save up, like get the equipment that I want going. But like I explained all that in a video in the past, which you can find in like my video assortment and such. So another subject for another day, of course. But today we're looking at another book, New Student StarFish, which is of course based off the episode, I think by the same name. Can't sure exactly, but the back reads, "There's no place SpongeBob loves more than boating school, and when his best friend Patrick wants to come along, SpongeBob is sure that this will be the best day ever. But things go from bad to worse when Patrick goofs off in class and lands them both in detention. SpongeBob's perfect academic record is on the road to ruination, and it's all his ex-best friend's fault. Will SpongeBob and Patrick be able to put aside their differences and work together? Patrick's first day of school will be a day they will never forget." And look for other books about SpongeBob SquarePants at your favorite store and whatnot. So yeah, of course this is based off of like the episode, which is a good one and all that. So that being said, let's get right into reading. SpongeBob gas. The light bulb that hung above the class science project Roger had cracked and burned out. The room was dim. SpongeBob looked at Patrick, then he looked at Roger, and he looked at Patrick again. If SpongeBob Patrick didn't act fast, Roger could die. Sorry I called you a stupid star," SpongeBob cried. "I'm sorry I got you in trouble and got you moved to the back of the room and got your good noodle star taken away and threw a book at you and shot spitball at you," and Patrick sobbed anxiously. "I'm sorry your apology is so long," SpongeBob interrupted. "Me too," said Patrick, their eyes locked. Let's save Roger. New Student StarFish by Jenny McGills, illustrated by Heather Martinez. And this was released in 2003, so this is a pretty old book. And you got other ones right here: To Get the Treat 'Em, which I did a video about, Naughty Knock Neighbors, Hall Monitor, World's Greatest Valentine, SpongeBob Superstar, Sandy's Rocket, Nature Pants, and Air Pants. So I'll try to get those books, try to get the rest of the books, like later on, so I could do reviews on them. But yeah, New Student StarFish. Chapter 1. It was a quiet morning under the sea. The residents of Bikini Bottom were all fast asleep, all except SpongeBob SquarePants. Honk, honk, honk. SpongeBob's foghorn alarm clock blared. SpongeBob sprang out of bed, wearing nothing but his tight white undies, and shimmed into his brown square pants. "Time for boating school," he said cheerfully. The only place SpongeBob loved more than his place of appointment, the Krusty Krab, was Mrs. Puff's boating school. And while he had yet to earn his boating license, it was a small detail that didn't stop SpongeBob from trying and trying and trying. SpongeBob always passed the written exam with flying colors, but when it came to the driving test, SpongeBob got so nervous behind the wheel that he failed every time. 39 times to be exact. "Let her rip, Gary," SpongeBob called out to his pet snail. Gary slithered over to the toaster and launched a slice of toast into the air. SpongeBob took a running leap turned into a somersault and caught the toast with one hand. Ta-da! He took a bow and then took a bite of the toast. Not bad, Gary. Toast could have been a little darker, though. Meow, Gary replied. See you later, said SpongeBob as he slid his big blue backpack over his shoulders. SpongeBob opened the front door to find his best friend Patrick Star blocking the doorway. He was holding a jellyfish net in one hand. Hi, SpongeBob, Patrick said cheerfully. You want to go jellyfishing? He gave the net a practice swing. Sorry, Patrick, I can't, SpongeBob replied. I have school today. How about a little snack at the Krusty Krab? Patrick suggested. I'll let you buy me a Krabby Patty. Tempting, but no, SpongeBob said. I take my education very seriously. Now, if you'll excuse me, Patrick sighed, disappointed. His eyes began to wet with tears. Well, what am I supposed to do all day? He whined. SpongeBob shrugged. I don't know, he said. What do you normally do while I'm at school? Oh, I just, wait for you to get back, Patrick admitted sheepily. SpongeBob thought for a moment. You could walk Gary for me, he suggested. Geez, SpongeBob, last time I walked Gary, I got lost, Patrick said, and stung by a mob of angry jellyfish. SpongeBob cringed, remembering the welts that had covered his friend's body. Well, you could blow bubbles, he offered. That should be safe enough. Blowing bubbles isn't fun without you, SpongeBob, Patrick said wistfully. Besides, last time I accidentally drank the bubbles and I was burping for days. SpongeBob thought to himself, what could Patrick do today? I've got an idea, he explained. You could come to the school with me. Just think about it, Patrick. You and me as classmates. Patrick imagined himself standing next to SpongeBob in the class picture, smiling proudly. Wow, Patrick cried. This is going to be the best day ever. But first, we have to find you something to wear to your first day of school, SpongeBob said. You know what they say, dress for success. You need to wear something that says, I have arrived. A few minutes later, Patrick was dressed and ready to go. He was wearing a neatly pressed white shirt, a red tie, and brown pants. He looked just like SpongeBob. Brace yourself, Patrick, said SpongeBob. You're in for the greatest academic thrill ride of your life. SpongeBob was sure this would be a day they would never forget. You can see a little picture right here with the pineapple. The two of them have a backpack. It's Patrick wearing the same clothing as SpongeBob. Chapter 2. School days, dear old golden rule days, SpongeBob sang as he and Patrick approached the entrance of Mrs. Puff's Mowing School. They stopped beneath a large archway. Well, we are here, SpongeBob said happily. Are you ready to board in your horizon? Expand your mind? Think out of the box? Okay, Patrick said with a shrug. SpongeBob retucked his crisp white shirt, hiked up his square pants, and straightened his red tie. Took out his handkerchief, bent down, and gave his shiny black shoes a quick buff. How do I look? SpongeBob asked Patrick. I don't know. Yellow, Patrick replied. SpongeBob took his head and tisk. Wrong answer, my friend, he said. I look smart, and so do you. Come on, Patrick, SpongeBob said as he skipped through the front gate, dragging Patrick by his hand. We don't want to be late. Mrs. Puff Mowing School was a small yellow boathouse pinched on a pier in front of a tall lighthouse. There was a practice track that surrounded the school where Mrs. Puff gave boating lessons to her students. SpongeBob flung open the front doors of the school with a flourish. The hallways seemed to sparkle. The newly washed floors shone. The windows gleamed, and the walls were freshly painted. SpongeBob beamed with pride. Behold, Patrick, The hallway of learning, SpongeBob said as he led Patrick down the long corridor lined with lockers. SpongeBob stopped in front of the water fountain. Speaking of, I need some water. Excuse me. This, of course, is the fountain of learning, he said with awe. I drink from it every day. Patrick leaned in to take a drink from the fountain. He turned the knob and the water shot up, missed his open mouth, and spurted right into his eyes. Patrick held his hands over his face. I'm blind! I'm blind! He cried. I've been blinded by knowledge. SpongeBob took out his handkerchief and wiped Patrick's eyes. Soak it up, buddy. Soak it up, he said, and sprung Patrick around. As I was saying, these are the lockers of learning, he continued. Patrick pointed to the staircase nearby. Are those the stairs of learning? He asked. SpongeBob shrugged. No, they're just stairs. SpongeBob scurried over to a staircase on the other side of the hallway and motioned with his arms. These are the stairs of learning. SpongeBob gave Patrick the complete tour of Mrs. Puff Boating School, the gymnasium of learning, the lunchroom of learning, the nurse's office of learning, and even the lavatory of learning. The two friends walked past the trophy case of a photo gallery of all of the sea folks who had earned their boating license at Mrs. Puff Boating School. The faces in the photos smiled. At the end of the long row hung an empty frame with a place card that read SpongeBob SquarePants. Hey, where's your picture, SpongeBob? Patrick wanted to know. SpongeBob looked up at the empty frame with longing. I have not yet made the Great Wall, he said sadly. But this year, I just know I'll get my boating license. Patrick put his hand on SpongeBob's shoulder as they continued down the hallway. Patrick looked around Mrs. Puff Boating School. Seemed like an ordinary school, except for one thing. The hallways were all empty. Hey, where is everybody? Patrick wondered aloud. Home, I guess, SpongeBob answered. Class doesn't start until 9 o'clock. Patrick looked at the watch and his eyes bulged. It's only 6:20, SpongeBob, he gasped. You said we were late. SpongeBob patted his friend's back, smiled. Late for being early, of course, he declared. Come on, Patrick. I'll show you the room with the most class, the classroom. SpongeBob led Patrick to a small room at the end of the hallway. Inside, there were 5 rows of shell-backed seats, tucked into the small desk in front of the teacher's desk. There were posters of boats and navigational charts tacked on the walls. Students could practice trying nautical knots on the ropes that were tethered to the bookshelf in the back. SpongeBob walked to the front of the room. This is the chalkboard. He patted the board affectionately. And this is the chalkboard where we all blank slates waiting to be filled with knowledge. Oh, Patrick cried. I want to be a blank slate. Slate? Slat? I think it's slat. Maybe. I'm pretty sure it's slat, but I have no idea. Don't worry, Patrick, SpongeBob replied. You are. Next, SpongeBob led Patrick to a large board filled with shiny gold stars. He looked up at it with an awe. And this magnificent piece of work is the Good Noodle Board, SpongeBob said proudly. Each student name is written here, he pointed. The gold stars next to the names are rewarded for all areas of scholastic excellence, attendance, penmanship, participation, basic desk citation, advanced desk citation, etc. I'll write your name here so you can start collecting stars too. SpongeBob wrote Patrick's name neatly in, and you can see a little picture right here, of course, neatly in the last row of the chart. Look at all the stars you have. Look at all the stars you have, SpongeBob, Patrick cried out. I'll never be as good as you. You can do anything you set your mind to, SpongeBob said as he ran his finger across the long row of gold stars that followed his name. And besides, I'm just like everyone else, no matter how many stars I have, SpongeBob said with a modesty. 74, he coughed into his head. Patrick spun around. What? Who said that? Was it him? He pointed to a glass tank set a wooden crate in the corner of the classroom. Inside the tank was a small white egg that perched in a egg cup. A bright light bulb dangled from above. That's our class science project, Roger, SpongeBob said. He teaches us the greatest life lesson of all. Life's a box of chocolates? Patrick guessed. No, Patrick. Roger teaches us the precious value of life, SpongeBob responded. Oh, right, Patrick nodded, still confused. You see, Roger's shell represents the fragile line between life and death. Behind the wheel of a boat, behind the wheel of a boat, SpongeBob explained, this light bulb represents knowledge. He paused for a dramatic event, and without its energy and warmth, Roger would die. Patrick switched the light bulb on and off repeatedly. Life, death, life, death, life, death, he cried with glee. Patrick, stop that! SpongeBob scolded, grabbing Patrick's hand. If the light bulb goes out for even a few minutes, Roger could die. It's very important to keep him warm until he's ready to hatch. Hatch? Oh no, cried Patrick. Roger's going to hatch? He'll crack into a million pieces. We have to save him. SpongeBob rolled his eyes. Patrick, Roger's supposed to hatch. How else will he find out what he is? Patrick's eyes widened. You mean you don't already know? He asked in a disbelief. Roger could be an alligator, or a lizard, or a terrifying sea monster, or a chick, SpongeBob suggested. He led Patrick to a desk in front of the classroom. He pulled another one up close. The best part about being early is that you get to sit close to the teacher. SpongeBob took his seat right in front of Mrs. Puff's desk. Do you think you are seaworthy enough to handle a second chair? He asked Pat. Well, do you think you're seaworthy enough to handle a second chair? He asked Patrick. Patrick slid into the seat next to SpongeBob. I'm learning. Chapter 3. 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, the students filled into Mrs. Puff's classroom. They all took seats at the far end of the room as far away from the teacher as possible. Sam the shirt next to Susie the salmon and began to play a game of Go Fish. Franco the flounder took out the latest comic book adventure of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, began to read. The rest of the students, with their hands on their desks, properly dozed off. SpongeBob took out his pencil and sharpened it to a point, and he opened his spiral on notebook and turned to a clean page. Patrick did the same. Hello, class, said Mrs. Puff, a large spotted pufferfish wearing a red dress. Excuse me. I see we have a new student today, she smiled warmly at Patrick. Young man, please stand up and introduce yourself. Who's the fat kid talking to? Miss Patrick whispered to SpongeBob. She's talking to you, Patrick. She's the teacher, SpongeBob hissed. Mrs. Puff cleared her throat. Excuse me, no whispering, SpongeBob. You have to set a good example of your new pupil, she said and turned to Patrick. Go ahead. Tell us your name. Don't be shy. Patrick stood up and turned around. He stared at the sea of blank faces. Patrick's knees began to knot together. Sweat bands forming on his upper lip and trickled down the sides of his face. Patrick stuttered. He was so nervous that he couldn't even remember his own name. Peter. No, that's all right, he thought. Patrick, He ran down a list of names that started with the letter P, but none of them sounded familiar. Then he turned, and out of the corner of his eye, Patrick noticed a calendar hanging on the wall. The date was the 24th of August. My name is 24, Patrick blurted out. The students howled with laughter. Patrick then shrugged and quietly returned to his seat. Oh, Patrick. Oh, great. Another genius. Mrs. Puff mumbled under her breath. Settle down, class, she commanded. Today's lesson will be about how to turn a boat. Mrs. Puff began to draw a detailed diagram on the chalkboard. SpongeBob nudged Patrick with his elbow. Hey, Patrick, do you know what's even funnier than 24? He whispered. No, what? SpongeBob stifled a giggle. 25. He said and busted out laughing. Patrick snorted and snickled. Then SpongeBob chuckled. Soon the two interrupted in uncontrollable laughter. Patrick held his belly, guffawing loudly. SpongeBob slid into the floor and rolled around in a fit of hysterics, I think. But Mrs. Puff didn't find SpongeBob and Patrick funny at all. Young man, she said to Patrick, this is your first day of school, so I'll let you off with a warning. As for you, SpongeBob, I expected more from a good noodle, and for someone who has failed his boating test 39 times, I suggest you pay attention. SpongeBob hung his head ashamed and concentrated on copying the diagram from the chalkboard. Patrick leaned over his desk and drew a picture. He folded and passed it to SpongeBob. It was an unfine drawing of Mrs. Puff. Across the top, he had scrawled, Big Fat Meanie. Big Fat Meanie? SpongeBob read out loud. Patrick, you can't write that about the teacher, he scolded. Mrs. Puff raised her eyebrows. What about the teacher? She said with a scowl. She marched over to SpongeBob's desk and snatched the picture from his hand. Oh no, SpongeBob gasped. He tried to grab the piece of paper back, but it was too late. Oh my, Mrs. Puff said with a huff. She peered at the drawing, as if I really look like this. Mrs. Puff crumpled the paper into a ball. She narrowed her eyes and looked right at SpongeBob. Then she spun around and stomped towards the good noodle board. SpongeBob watched the scene as if happening in slow motion. No! He shrieked. He shut his eyes and covered his ears, but he could not deny what was about to happen. Mrs. Puff glared at SpongeBob. SpongeBob, I believe you know the punishment for 2 classroom disruptions, she said snarlily. Your behavior will cost you 1 gold star. She ripped the gold star from beside SpongeBob's name. No, SpongeBob cried. He banged his fist on the desk, stood up and spun around, and then fainted onto the floor. Patrick leaned over and slapped his friend's face. Wake up, SpongeBob, Patrick shouted in his ear. Startled, SpongeBob's eyelids fluttered open. If one wishes to be a good noodle, one must behave like a good noodle, Mrs. Puff chimed. I am a good noodle. I am a good noodle. I am a good noodle, SpongeBob chanted. SpongeBob had always been the most earnest student at boating school, if not the most talented. He prided himself on sitting straight in his seat, paying close attention, taking detailed notes. The loss of a gold star was a blemish on his near-perfect academic record. You'll get your start back when you earn it, Mrs. Puff said, ignoring SpongeBob's acnix, continuing her lesson. As I was saying, the first thing you need to learn about turning boat is, Patrick yawned, Nap time yet, he interrupted. Mrs. Puff spun around. SpongeBob, I've had enough of this behavior, she shouted. Collect your things and move to the desk in the back of the room. SpongeBob couldn't believe his ears. Me? Why? Mrs. Puff puffed a bigger and bigger with rage. She tore over SpongeBob's desk and took a deep breath. Because the big, fat meanie says so, she boomed. SpongeBob's skinny legs shook with fear as he slid out from behind his desk. SpongeBob's shoulders sagged and his head dropped. He turned towards the back of the room and began his long walk of shame. SpongeBob had almost reached the back of the room. He looked back over his shoulder at Mrs. Puff with puppy dog eyes, hoping she'd feel sorry for him and change her mind. Mrs. Puff glared at him and glared back at him with "Don't even try it" eyes. Barnacles, SpongeBob sighed. Thanks a lot, Patrick, as he shuffled past his friend's desk. Oh, you're welcome, SpongeBob, Patrick said innocently, not knowing he had done anything wrong. Anytime, pal. The back of the room was very, very far from the front. See a little picture right here from the front. SpongeBob could barely hear what Mrs. Puff was saying. Yo-lay-hoo, SpongeBob yelled, and yo-lay-hoo, his echo bounced back. SpongeBob took his seat at an isolated desk known as Skid Row. The desk was dingy and decrepit and covered in graffiti. Someone had covered "School is for chumps" into the desk fishing hook that was still stuck there. What kind of a student sits here? SpongeBob worried out loud. I guess I could still be a good noodle from away back here, he said hopefully, though his eyes filled with tears. When turning left, Miss Puff continued, you must switch on your left turn signal at least 40 feet from turn. Look both ways to ensure there aren't any obstacles in your path. Firmly grasp the wheel and rotate it counterclockwise. Man, all this reading is making my throat dry, but we're still going on though. Patrick turned around in his chair. Psst, SpongeBob. SpongeBob turned his face away. Just ignore him, SpongeBob thought to himself. Patrick ripped a piece of paper from his notebook, crumbled it into a ball, and threw it at SpongeBob. Psst, hey SpongeBob, over here. Whatever you do, don't look at him, SpongeBob instructed himself. He whistled as he twiddled his thumbs. Patrick chewed a small bit of paper, pushed it into a straw, and then blew a spitball at SpongeBob. It landed right back between SpongeBob's eyes. No reaction. Patrick launched another spitball that stuck to SpongeBob's long nose. And another, and then 3 more. Covered in spitballs, SpongeBob still would not look in Patrick's direction. Determined not to miss a word, Mrs. Puff wrote on chalkboard. SpongeBob wiped the sticky goo from around his eyes and continued taking notes. Finally, Patrick threw a heavy textbook that landed squarely on SpongeBob's head. Psst, hey SpongeBob, I'm trying to tell you something very important. What? SpongeBob shouted at last. Patrick waved. Hi. Just as SpongeBob was about to explode, the bell for recess rang. Chapter 4. SpongeBob stomped out of the classroom before Patrick could catch up to him. He was furious. Hey buddy, wait up, Patrick called to SpongeBob. That was some funny stuff in there. I really liked the part with the spitballs. SpongeBob slammed his locker door shut. There was nothing funny about what you did, Patrick, he yelled. You are nothing but a speed bump on the road to higher education. SpongeBob poked Patrick in the chest with his finger. You got me in trouble. You got me moved to the back of the room, and worst of all, you cost me a good noodle star. Star Mars. Who cares about a stupid star? Patrick replied. Gee, Patrick, it seems like you would care about stupid stars, considering you are one, SpongeBob shouted. Patrick narrowed his eyes. I'll deal with you after class, he growled. It is after class, SpongeBob growled back. Just then, the hallway filled with students. They formed a circle around SpongeBob and Patrick, chanting, Fight! 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 And pumping their fins in the air. I don't see anyone fighting, do you? Patrick asked SpongeBob. They're talking about us, SpongeBob replied. We are fighting. Oh, Patrick said. Don't mind if I do. He raised his fist in front of SpongeBob's face challengingly. Patrick and SpongeBob went at it. Fist flailing fast, but not touching one another at all. They call this a fight? A big fish wearing a football jersey said. This is embarrassing. The rest of the crowd murmured in agreement. Mrs. Puff heard the commotion and hurried into the hall. What's going on here? She cried, pushing her away from the crowd. Fighting? She exclaimed. She picked up SpongeBob and Patrick by the backs of their pants. Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but SpongeBob SquarePants, I send you and your friend to detention. May Neptune have mercy on your souls. Chapter 5. SpongeBob and Patrick have been sitting in detention for 1 hour. There was one more hour to go. The life-preserved shaped clock ticked slowly. Patrick was doodling his name over and over again on a scrap of paper. SpongeBob was wondering how he ended up in detention. In 1 day, I've gone from a good noodle to a bad egg, SpongeBob said with a sigh, and it's all Patrick's fault. He looked at his ex-best friend, who sat at a desk in the back of the room. I hate you, Patrick. I hate you more, Patrick retorted. I hate you no matter what, SpongeBob said with a growl. Well, I hate you even if you don't hate you. SpongeBob looked confused. I hate you even if that made sense. I hate you even if you were me, Patrick bellowed, his face twisted in anger. I'd hate you even if I hate you even if the light bulb keep Roger alive went out, said SpongeBob. Huh? SpongeBob gasped. The light bulb that hung above class science project. Roger was cracked and burned out. The room was dim. SpongeBob looked at Patrick. Then he looked at Roger. Then he looked at Patrick again. If SpongeBob and Patrick didn't act fast, Roger could die. I'm sorry I called you a stupid star, SpongeBob cried. I'm sorry I got you in trouble and got you moved to the back of the room and got your good noodle star taken away and threw a book at you and shot spitballs in you and... Patrick blabbled anxiously. I'm sorry your apology is so long, SpongeBob interrupted. Me too, said Patrick. Their eyes locked. Let's save Roger, they said at once. Chapter 6. I'll keep Roger warm while you get a light bulb from the supply closet, SpongeBob instructed Patrick. Gotcha. One light bulb coming up, Patrick said as he dashed out of the classroom. Carefully, SpongeBob reached into the tank and pinched Roger between his thumbs and forefinger. Don't worry, Roger, he said. You're in good hands. First, SpongeBob began to rub Roger back and forth against his shirt for warmth. Then he tried to warm Roger with his breath. He lifted the egg to his mouth. He breathed quickly. He even tried sitting on Roger gently. SpongeBob lowered his backside onto the egg. Hey, if it works for a hen, why not me? He wondered out loud. But nothing seemed to work. Roger was cooling fast. Meanwhile, Patrick had finally found the supply closet. A mountain of light bulb boxes were stacked up to the ceiling. Instead of taking a light bulb from a nearby box, Patrick mounted the first box and slowly climbed up others to reach the light bulb that was twisted into the ceiling fixture. Once he unscrewed it, Patrick rappelled down the boxes to the ground. I'm coming, SpongeBob, Patrick called as he sprinted from the supply closet. SpongeBob was frantically knitting a scarf for Roger. The clicking of the knitting needles could be heard all the way down the hallway. He was knitting so fast the needles were smoking from friction. Hurry, Patrick, SpongeBob cried. I've got to find Roger some warmth. Then just Patrick burst through the door and barreled into the classroom. SpongeBob stood up and ran towards him. Cradling Roger in the crook of his arms, Patrick ran towards SpongeBob, holding the light bulb above the hand. Crash! Patrick and SpongeBob collided hard. Both the egg and the light bulb flew up into the air, and SpongeBob Patrick watched in horror. Without the light bulb, Roger will die, SpongeBob gasped. Without Roger, the light bulb will have nothing to warm, Patrick sobbed. SpongeBob and Patrick looked at one another. They knew just what to do. They had seen their favorite superheroes, Merry Man and Boy Boy, do it thousands of times. As they crouched down low, and then sprang up into the air at the exact time, SpongeBob stretched his arms up with all of his might. Just as gravity began to tug down back to the ground, SpongeBob closed his fingers around the fragile egg. Patrick was not so lucky. As quickly as he went up, he plummeted down in a heavy hump. He missed the light bulb, but as the light bulb was about to crash into the floor, Patrick grabbed SpongeBob by his ankles and thrust him forward. SpongeBob's legs and body shot forward as far as they could go. SpongeBob closed his eyes tightly and stretched his left arm out with determination. The light bulb landed snugly in his open palm. SpongeBob opened his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. We did it, he exclaimed. We saved Roger. Patrick gave SpongeBob a tight bear hug. We're heroes, SpongeBob. Real live heroes. SpongeBob's face turned red and then blue. Patrick was hugging him too tightly. Can't breathe. Need air. SpongeBob squeaked. Patrick loosened his arms. SpongeBob clasped onto the ground, gasping for air. Excuse me. The two friends walked to the corner of the classroom where Roger's empty tank rested on a crate. SpongeBob placed the egg back in its egg cup. Patrick stood on a chair and screwed the light bulb onto the socket above. Light filled the room. Seemingly out of nowhere, Mrs. Puff appeared from behind her one-way chalkboard. Good job, boys, she said, patting them each on the back. I saw the whole thing, and I couldn't be more proud of your teamwork. Patrick gave SpongeBob a thumbs up for your gallant effort to save our class pet and your willingness to work together, she said with a wink. I've decided to award you each one gold star, although I'm not sure what saving an egg has to do with boating school. Woohoo! SpongeBob and Patrick yelled and did a victory dance. Go SpongeDar, go SpongeDar, go SpongeDar, Patrick cheered as SpongeBob thrust his hips from side to side. Suddenly, Patrick stopped abruptly. Wait a minute. Did she just say boating school? Patrick asked with disbelief. I thought this was Spanish school. With Patrick spun on his heel, see you, SpongeBob, he called as he sounded out of the classroom. Adios, big fat meanie. And that concluded Patrick's first and last day of school. Hey, what did I miss? And here's about the author. And that is it for new student StarFish. Hilarious book, and of course a hilarious episode in general. I can definitely tell this book is just slightly different from the actual episode, because I can usually tell when the writing is a little different. If you compare actually reading this and watching the episode, it's just a little bit different, but still a nice book in general. Of course, the artwork is different. So yeah, that is it for really today's video. So yeah, let me try it again. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you like what you see here and you want to see me do more videos where I read, some goofy SpongeBob books with like these, then be sure to subscribe to my channel today. Click that bell notification so you'll stay notified when I make new videos. Like the video, comment what you think of it. Do you have this book? Do you like the episode in general? Share this with your friends, family, and other people who love books or love SpongeBob in general. And with that being said, I will see all of you in my next video. Bye bye.